This is the Amazing Education Podcast. Powered by the Ames Community School District, I'm your host, Eric Smith. On today's episode, we are joined by Ames High senior Yuer Zhu. We're going to have an amazing conversation about her artwork, where the inspiration comes from, and talk through some of her amazing pieces. All right, Yuer, thank you for being on this episode of the Amazing Education Podcast. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I am very good. I just want to thank you for being on this episode. We actually haven't had a chance to meet prior to this episode, but believe me, I have seen your artwork and what you have done, and every time I see a piece that is sent to me over email, we always share it in our magazine, or we have shared many pieces, I am completely blown away. And so when I was starting to think about Ames High students who could be on this podcast, you were very high on my list of students to reach out to. So how is the school year going for you? We talked a little bit before we started recording the episode, but you're a senior this year.
Yep.
How is your senior year going?
Pretty good, I would say. I am a remote student this year, and I will continue to be a remote student for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
It has been a bit tough because I haven't been able to see my friends and interact with people at school, but I have been enjoying time at home and spending time with my family.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that's very cool. So I wrote down a couple of, I'm going to sort of set the stage because predominantly what we're going to talk about on this podcast is your artwork. And I am always fascinated and always want to talk with creative people. And you certainly fit that category. And I just want to talk about, where some of your inspiration comes from your artwork, sort of your process. And so we'll dive into all of that. But to set the stage, I went back on several of our past magazines because we have, like I said before, reported out on some of your work, but you've been part of the National Art Honor Society. You've been selected as an award winner for them. Certainly all-state honors. You had a best of show for a Youth Art Month show, and I'm sure I'm missing many more accolades that you have received, but when did you become serious about your artwork?
I would say I became serious at about freshman or sophomore year in high school because that was the time that I was figuring out what I wanted to do, career-wise, and what I wanted to do in the future. So once I determined that I wanted to become an artist, I became more serious about my artwork. I started to push myself to improve my skills and to improve my art concept, and yeah.
So when you started this process, what happened before then? Was there a turning point? I know. Well, go ahead.
Yeah. So, in middle school, I would attend National Junior Art Honor Society with my teacher, Miss Dobbins, and I would always work on art after school for hours at a time, and I just really enjoyed it. But in high school, when I wanted to find out what I wanted to do in the future, I decided that art was the thing that I enjoyed the most and the thing that I was good at. So that's why that was kind of the turning point. That was when I decided I wanted to become an artist.
How much time do you spend on it, do you say, in a week? Because looking at the pieces, and we're going to look at some of them today and talk through some of them, it's a lot of work, and I'm sure, it's a passion area and it's something that gets you excited, but it's also a big time commitment to do something on the level that you're doing. And so, how much time do you spend in a week just working on stuff?
In a week, I would say, maybe 2 hours to 5 hours,
okay.
Maybe. It always just depends on, how much schoolwork I have because I have to, balance that out. But yeah, I would say about 3 hours average maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have I consider myself a creative person. I put together our district magazine, which is, a different creative process than some of the work that you're doing, but it's something that I'm always thinking about. Like I'm always thinking about layout or what stories we could be writing. So you say 2 to 5 hours that you're working on it. Are you thinking about it all the time?
Yes, I would say, yeah. When I'm not occupied with like schoolwork and homework and things like that, I do think about it a lot. Yeah, I'm like always on the lookout for new inspiration and new ideas. I like to keep like a sketchbook and notebook handy, like in case I come up with inspiration, I like to jot it down.
What would be an example of something like that? That's interesting to me. Has there been one that you've taken from just an idea and then I'm certain you moved it forward all the way through completion? Like, what would be an example of one of those that you would just jot down?
So, I was creating a three-dimensional art project once, and I was like on the lookout for types of materials that I could use, and I saw these plastic bottles like in my house, and I was like, what if I create something out of those? So I jot down that idea, and then eventually I did create.
Is that what you sent me?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about it. I think that's a
Sure.
good segue. So I was thinking about this. So this is a podcast, which is, audio driven, but we do also video record these that are on YouTube. And if there was an episode that, someone should watch rather than listen, this might be the one, because we're going to take a look actually at some projects that you have looked like. So for this particular one, so it started as an idea, but talk us through, what are we looking at here? What is this?
So it's a set of light fixtures, and they're made completely out of plastic bottles. So this project was actually inspired by Sarah Turner, an eco artist I found online, and she does really cool light fixtures made completely out of plastic material. And so I thought that was a really cool idea, and I wanted to try something like that. So I collected a bunch of plastic bottles from around my house, and then I painted each of them in an analogous color scheme, and then I cut each of them into strips of different shapes and sizes, and then I kind of just glued them all together with hot glue, and then stuck a light bulb in the middle, and then it just turned out to be a pretty cool, intricate light fixture.
I love every part of it. Now, where are these now?
They are at my house.
Are they being used?
Yeah, I sometimes turn them on occasionally.
Well, they're beautiful. I mean, they really are. I mean, it's clearly a beautiful piece of work, but functional nonetheless. So where else? So you just gave us an example of an artist that you were, researching or looking into. Where else do you get inspiration? I mean, other artists, but where else are you getting inspiration for your work?
Yeah, I get most of my inspiration from other artists. I usually look on social media like Instagram, where I like to find different styles, different mediums, different concepts posted by different types of artists. I also look at books too. Like I have a bunch of graphic design books at home where I get a lot of my conceptual inspiration from. I also get inspiration from current events and things that are happening around me. Sometimes I want to communicate a message or to advocate for a topic or bring awareness to something. So
So let's talk through this. You're really good at this. You're good at segueing, because this is another piece that I wanted to talk to you about. So this was done through Adobe Illustrator.
Right, yes.
And so talk us through what you were thinking about when you created this particular piece, and maybe describe what it is that we're looking at.
So this is an artist's book. It was inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement that was happening at the time, and just the need to promote racial equality and bring awareness to the challenges faced by racial minorities. And so beginning this project, I did a bunch of research, and to better understand racism in America, and I looked at a bunch of news articles and TED Talks, and from that I compiled like a list of quotes and pictures, and I combined that stuff with a specific design style on Adobe Illustrator, and then once I was done designing, I printed a physical copy of it, and then I shared pictures of it on social media to kind of fulfill my purpose of advocating for racial equality. Yeah.
It's incredibly powerful. And, just from a design aesthetic, it's incredibly beautiful. But as far as the message also that, you're looking to share, it's incredibly powerful, and I'm getting a sense that you're following current events and you're following what's happening, and I find it to be really powerful to for you, but a lot of people, but yourself particularly, to use your talents to share something that is very beautiful, but also can be powerful. We see authors in a literary sense are sharing their talents, and you are sharing your talents in this way as well. I think it's absolutely wonderful. So far, and we're going to talk about at least another one, if not more, but so far, we've talked about plastic bottles, and then you're also working on Adobe Illustrator, which, that range of creativity as an artist is very wide. Mm-hmm. Is there a certain medium that you gravitate towards more than others, or has there been one that you've really grown to appreciate, but maybe you didn't when you first started?
Yeah, so I think I would say I like graphic design the most, and like computer digital art, that kind of thing, just because there's so many possibilities, there's so many things you can do with it, and it's all just like right at your fingertips on the computer. There's also a lot of freedom. It's kind of different from like drawing and painting, because there's sometimes a few limitations to that, but with graphic design there's so many different possibilities, and but like, it's not to say that I don't like drawing and painting. I really do enjoy drawing and painting too. I feel like you can become really creative with that as well. Yeah.
So you had talked about, really becoming a serious artist. You said around your freshman year, you started gravitating towards that way. Talk to me about how some of your art teachers at the high school really took and supported you during this process.
Yeah, so Mrs. Weedy at the high school, she really encouraged me, and she made me aware of all of these competitions available and things that I could participate in, and so I guess she supported me that way, and also just like congratulating me every time I received an award, and just always, she was always like there for me to answer any of my questions. Yeah, and also in middle school, Miss Dobbins was my art teacher as well. She helped me develop my art skills and my conceptual art concepts and things like that. Yeah.
How much do you rely on your understanding of art concepts? Is it intuitive for you as a creative student, like you just sort of gravitate towards understanding, or do you really think about particular art concepts when you're developing a piece?
I think it's kind of intuitive for me. I just kind of go with the flow, but sometimes I think about like what I want to communicate and how I want to communicate it. It's kind of a hard concept to grasp.
Yeah.
But yeah, I experiment a lot with that kind of thing, and yeah.
Do you find that a lot of your pieces are always pivoted around a message or a particular angle? I know that you've named, you have titles for all of your art pieces, or at least the ones that I've seen. Does that help steer the direction of the piece?
Yeah, so sometimes if I want to like communicate a message, like for example, anxiety or like a chaotic feeling, then that would be an example of like where I communicate a message. But sometimes it's also just me trying to do a bunch of exploration with different types of styles and mediums and things like that.
Let's talk through at least one other piece. This one has always caught my eye, titled Identity. Talk me through what we're looking at in this particular piece.
So it's an acrylic painting, and there's actually origami pyramids stuck onto the surface. And so I folded a bunch of pyramids together out of origami paper, and I hot glued them onto the surface. And for the painting in the background, I kind of incorporated like a kind of unique style, I guess. There's a bunch of organic shapes and solid colors and things like that. Yeah.
Let's move through at least one others. I have a stack here that we could go through. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about this piece.
So this piece is called Overthink, and it's actually communicating like anxiety and overthinking things. So this is made with acrylic paint, and when I was making this, I really wanted to convey like a chaotic feeling, kind of how it might feel for an anxious person. So I kind of used the medium to do that. Like I used paint splatters, made paint slashes to create a chaotic atmosphere to communicate that chaotic message.
We'll go through at least one more, kind of along the same lines as a chaos theme here, and that's what I wrote down on the back as far as the title of this one. Talk me through this one. I love the backgrounds on all of these pieces. It seems to be very much your style, but also each one is very different as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this one is called Chaos, and is also made out of acrylic paint. So for this one, I was exploring different ways to apply paint. And so you can see the swipe marks were actually made by a large palette knife. And what I did was I squeezed a few colors of paint, and then I kind of took it, picked it up with the palette knife, and I scraped it onto the canvas. And then it kind of made this rough kind of style, and that's kind of what I was going for the chaotic feeling. And yeah.
So how many projects do you have going at any given time? Do you focus on one at a time, or do you have multiple projects in various stages?
Yeah, so I focus on one project at a time.
Really? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm kind of the person who doesn't like to multitask. I feel like that can be kind of complicated and a little messy at times. But yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I focus on one thing at a time, just because I feel like I'm more productive that way, and my art is more effective that way, I think. Yeah.
So you're a senior. What's next? And I don't just mean, what are you doing next year, but where do you want your path to start steering towards as far as your art? I know that you had mentioned you've really been gravitating towards graphic design. Is that a part of your art that you would want to continue to pursue professionally, or as a job, or what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking of going into graphic design for a career. I'm applied to Carnegie Mellon University, and I got into that, and so I'm going there for the next 4 years to study design, and also possibly minor in psychology too.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is absolutely incredible.
For the next 4 years, I'm thinking of I'm pursuing graphic design, and I think with that, I want to help others and help other people through design, whether that be creating app designs that help people, or website designs, or also other creative things maybe digital collages or things like that. Yeah.
Well, now I have more questions about this. So with graphic design, talk me through a few of those other projects. Are there any of those types of projects that you just described that you're currently, thinking about or actively working on? Because the pieces that we talk through today are incredibly beautiful art pieces, sort of in isolation. But when you start to talk about graphic design a bit, or website design, those are things that are used, can be used universally. Mm-hmm. And so talk me through sort of your thinking around pursuing that, professionally.
So I really like app designs and logo design, so I think I'm going to do something with that maybe. In the past I created an app design that helps people find recipes, customizable to like their specific needs. So I kind of just want to do something like that in the future where I can use app designs to help others. And yeah.
Well, I think, with the way social media is, the way in which branding is so important, the way that people access information through websites, I think it is a field that is incredibly important, not just now, but will continue to be incredibly important moving forward. And I think having thoughtful people behind the computer and working on, the elegance of those logos and website design is absolutely essential. Mm-hmm. Well, Yuer, I want to thank you for being on this episode of the Amazing Education Podcast. I felt like my jaw was dropped most of the time just listening to you and listening to the process that you go through. And so I just want to thank you for being on this episode, and I wish you absolutely the best of luck moving forward, not just this senior year, but, the next 4 years and even beyond that as far as your art goes and everything else. So I want to thank you again.
Well, thank you for having me.